They believed they could rob me of what rightfully belonged to me and face no consequences. My husband's family had manipulated papers to seize what amounted to nearly $1.5 million in assets from my grandmother's estate. What they didn't know was that I carried proof of their darkest secrets, and when I finally chose to reveal it, everything they thought they controlled crumbled. I was in the middle of folding clothes when the envelope arrived. It wasn't a bill, not some advertisement. It was thick, official-looking, the kind of mail that makes your stomach tighten before you even tear it open. Inside was the will. My grandmother had passed away a month earlier, and while I had braced myself for grief, I wasn't prepared for what her lawyer had written. She left everything to me. Not just a box of keepsakes or family jewelry. The house, acres of land, and major stock investments. Together, it was valued at nearly $1.5 million. My hands shook as I read her words over again. After my parents died when I was in high school, my grandmother had been my anchor. She believed in me, and now she had entrusted me with her legacy. When I told my husband, Marcus, he smiled, hugged me tightly, and whispered, "You deserve every bit of this." But his eyes betrayed him. Too sharp, too watchful, too calculating. His parents, however, didn't bother to hide their intentions. At dinner the following week, his mother Denise twirled her wine glass and said, "It's only fair we all benefit. We've been there for you since the beginning. Surely Mama would have wanted family to share." His father added with a smooth grin, "That money could go so far for all of us." I laughed lightly, brushing it off. It's not a winning ticket, it's a legacy. But from that night forward, I began to notice things. Marcus taking long phone calls with his parents behind closed doors. Receipts from legal consultations that he never mentioned to me. Then one day, I opened the safe and discovered the deed to the house was gone. My stomach twisted into knots. When I asked Marcus, he acted confused, insisting maybe I misplaced it. I wanted so badly to believe him, until I discovered the forged paperwork. They had shifted the assets into a bogus trust listing Marcus and his parents as beneficiaries. My grandmother's last wishes, my inheritance, stolen. I could have gone straight to the police. But instead, I decided if they wanted to play dirty, they had no idea how prepared I was to fight back. Hidden under a loose plank in the guest room floor was a small fireproof box I hadn't opened in years. Inside were old photos, a necklace that belonged to my mother, and a flash drive my grandmother once told me to keep safe. She had said, almost cryptically, "People aren't always who they say they are. This is my insurance." I finally understood what she meant when I opened the files. The first video on the flash drive was grainy, but clear enough to recognize the faces. Denise, years younger, sat in a hotel room with stacks of money spread across the bed. The next clip showed Marcus's father arguing with a man who later revealed himself as an undercover investigator. My pulse quickened as I kept watching. The files told the story my in-laws had buried decades ago. They weren't just greedy, they had been running schemes since the late 1990s. According to the dated recordings, they escaped charges back then by pinning the blame on someone else, changing their names, and relocating. Even Marcus had grown up under a different last name. I sat frozen, my breath shallow. They weren't just opportunists, they were career criminals. And now, I had evidence. I knew I couldn't just expose them recklessly. If I did, they might slip through the cracks again. I needed to make sure they never touched a cent of what my grandmother left me. So I planned, quietly and carefully. I smiled through family dinners, nodded politely at Denise's sly suggestions that I was being selfish, and even pretended to be grateful for Marcus's support. All the while, I was tightening the net. My first step was calling in someone I trusted, Mr. Harris, a lawyer who had once helped my grandmother. When I showed him the files, his eyebrows shot up, but his voice was steady. "This changes everything. With this, we can freeze assets, block fraudulent transfers, and even press charges for conspiracy and forgery." I felt the first wave of relief I'd had in weeks. Meanwhile, I started dropping subtle hints around Marcus and his parents. Casual questions about their past. Jokes about people who change their names. Each time, I saw the flicker of panic in their eyes. Watching them squirm became my quiet satisfaction. Marcus grew more irritable. Denise started avoiding my gaze. His father's confidence cracked. I knew the pressure was working. So I set the stage. I invited all of them, Marcus, Denise, and his father, over for dinner one Saturday. I cooked their favorite dishes, poured expensive wine, and smiled sweetly as though everything was perfectly normal. But halfway through the meal, I excused myself, returned with my laptop, and placed it in the center of the table. When the grainy video started playing, the room went still. Denise's face drained of color. Marcus's father's hands trembled. "Where did you get that?" he demanded. I leaned back and said calmly, "Grandma always kept receipts." "Literally." Marcus jumped up, his voice shaking. "This is blackmail." "No," I replied firmly. "This is protection. You forged documents and tried to steal from me. You'll sign everything back over, void the trust, and admit what you did, or these files go to federal authorities." Denise burst into tears, insisting, "We were just trying to keep it in the family." I snapped my laptop shut. Family doesn't stab each other in the back. That night, they left in silence, and for the first time, I felt the power shift in my favor. But I wasn't done yet, because Marcus was still my husband. And I had one more move to make. Next morning, I walked into Mr. Harris's office and told him I wanted out of my marriage. Marcus sat there later, across from me, stunned and deflated like the air had been punched out of him. "You can't be serious," he whispered, his voice cracking. "More serious than I've ever been," I said flatly. He tried pleading, insisting we could work things out. But I didn't waver. "You didn't just make mistakes, Marcus. You made choices. You chose greed. You chose betrayal. And now I'm choosing freedom." The divorce paperwork was already drafted. Mr. Harris had prepared a separation agreement that secured every piece of my grandmother's estate. The forged trust was invalidated, the stolen documents nullified. To make matters worse for Marcus, the forensic accountant Mr. Harris brought in discovered that he had attempted to funnel money from one of my grandmother's companies into an offshore account in Bermuda. That wasn't just dishonesty, it was financial crime. With the findings turned over to investigators, Marcus realized how cornered he truly was. His swagger disappeared, his words fumbled, and within a week, he was packing his bags to leave. But even as he walked out, I knew I wasn't finished. The flash drive contained more than just videos. It had names, receipts, and a trail of shady deals that Marcus's parents had tried to bury. I printed the most damning pieces and slipped them anonymously to a local investigative journalist known for uncovering corruption. Within days, the headline blared across the city's front pages. Couple's secret past exposed. Decades of fraud and false identities. Denise and her husband were named publicly. Their schemes, their shady deals, their sudden disappearance years ago, all of it splashed across the news. They tried damage control, of course. Claimed it was in the past. Claimed they had changed. But the community wasn't buying it. Neighbors stopped speaking to them. Their country club revoked their membership. Even Marcus's job let him go, cutting ties to avoid bad press. For the first time in their lives, they were facing real consequences. And for the first time in a long while, I felt free. 3 weeks after the article exploded, there was a knock at my door. I expected a delivery or maybe a nosy neighbor. Instead, a woman I'd never seen before stood there, mid-40s, sharp features, eyes that carried both caution and wisdom. "You don't know me," she began softly, "but I knew your grandmother, and I know exactly what your in-laws did." Her name was Monica, and she once worked alongside my grandmother when she helped fund a small startup years back. According to Monica, Marcus's parents had tried to extort that very company until my grandmother shut them down. Afterward, they disappeared. New names, new city, new story. When Monica saw the headlines, she knew she had to come forward. She handed me a folder stuffed with affidavits, police reports, and contact lists. Your in-laws didn't just wrong you, she explained. They left a trail of victims who never got justice. But now the truth is coming out. I sat at my kitchen table that night, glass of wine in hand, documents spread out before me like battle plans. This was no longer just about me or my inheritance. It was about protecting others who had been cheated, silenced, or ignored. That's when the idea took shape. A foundation, funded with a portion of the inheritance, dedicated to helping victims of financial abuse and fraud. I named it the Carter Legacy Fund, after my grandmother. Monica agreed to join as the first board member. Word spread quickly. More people stepped forward. People harmed not only by Marcus's parents but by other predatory families and corporations. We were building something bigger than revenge. We were building justice. Meanwhile, the storm around Marcus's family only grew. Federal investigators swooped in with charges: wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. Marcus's father was taken first, then Denise, and finally Marcus himself as he tried to slip out of state. Their trial became front-page news. The lies, the fake names, the scams, it was all ripped apart under oath. And for the first time, I watched them sit stripped of arrogance, powerless in court. It wasn't triumph I felt that day. It was closure. When the trial ended, I felt like I could finally breathe again. I sold one of the extra properties my grandmother left me and moved to a quiet lakeside town. There, I opened a small bookstore and cafe, something I'd always dreamed of but never had the chance to do. Locals came to know me simply as Alana, the woman who made the best lavender lattes and hosted book club nights that often turned into deep conversations about resilience and truth. The Carter Legacy Fund grew quickly. We offered free legal clinics, partnered with pro bono attorneys, and even launched scholarships for law students who wanted to pursue justice reform. Monica stood beside me every step of the way, reminding me that legacy isn't about money. It's about what you protect and who you fight for. Every year, I still visit my grandmother's grave. I tell her about the foundation, about the lives we've helped rebuild, and about how I finally understand what she meant when she said legacy is about honor, not wealth. 1 year to the day after the trial closed, I stood outside a courthouse again, not as a victim, not even as a witness, but as an advocate. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled, and behind me, our foundation cut the ribbon on its first community justice center. The crowd cheered, but my heart was calm. I realized then that healing doesn't come from tearing others down. It comes from building something better from the ruins. Even now, strangers sometimes message me after reading about my story. Some want advice. Some just want to be heard. I answer every single one. Because I know what it feels like to be betrayed, to stand alone, and to fight like hell to reclaim what was stolen. And when they ask me how I survived, I tell them the truth. I didn't just survive. I rebuilt. I reclaimed. And I chose a legacy that no one can ever steal from me again. Sometimes the battles we never expected to fight turn out to be the ones that define us. Betrayal may break you for a moment, but it doesn't have to own you forever. I learned that legacy isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in dignity, in resilience, and in the lives you choose to lift up when the dust settles. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this. You are stronger than the lies told about you, louder than the silence forced on you, and braver than the betrayal meant to bury you. I didn't just survive. I built a new beginning. And so can you.